So this is the third part of like what we should do before we start to kind of do any drawings really. And it's to do research, looking for reference to help us also to make some decision if we don't have a very precise idea yet about who is the character, where, when it's taking care of the action, and what kind of action is happening. So this is where we were last time, where we have like all those options available, and now we can do some research to help us decide like, well, I think it would be more interesting to have the project taking place in the lake, for example, and during a certain time period, etc., etc. Now there is like two main reasons why we want to do some research and we want to look for proper reference. Sometimes we're just gonna find a photo of like a very unique architecture we never saw before, and that's gonna spark some interest, spark our creativity and our imagination. Another reason is like you always need to have your design and your project grounded on existing things. So I know like usually when we talk about designing an imaginary world, we tend to think that 90% of that world is designed through our imagination and that 10% of it is just based on reality. It's actually quite the opposite. You might not realize it, but everything you see in movies, even like the crazy design, are always based on something that actually exists with a twist to make it a bit more cool. So I'm gonna take the example of Avatar, The Way of Water. You can realize that all the character from the water tribe is incredibly based on Maori culture. You can see through the tattoo, the way they live, etc. And you can even see like down to like the design of the character, the way like their arm is shaped, kind of look like the arm of like a frog, and that's normal. It's based on design of existing animal who have more flat arm because it will allow them to move faster under the water. And you can even see it in the creature in the movie where you see like some creature based on like flying fish, or well, again with a twist, so it looks a bit more unique, a bit more alienish, but really it's very similar to what we will see on our own planet. Another movie that people think is just based on imagination would be Star Wars. To just make it very simple, even if it happened in a far, far away galaxy a long, long time ago, a house in Star Wars, to the core, is gonna look like a house that we have on Earth. You're gonna have wall, you're gonna have windows, and you're gonna have doors. And if you really wanted to make it alienish, you're pretty sure gonna base that design on like, let's say, a bird's nest. If you really want to have it more alienish, like, ooh, there is no door, there is no window. More seriously, more precisely for Star Wars, you can see like a lot of the clothing and a lot of the design language are going to be inspired from like Japanese culture and also from World War II. Now, the reason why we are using elements are grounded into reality so much is because, well, first of all, it makes the design more believable for people. Second, you are working in entertainment. And when your audience is gonna like look at your design, look at your movie, look at the game that you design, they need to understand exactly what's going on within a second. They don't have 20 minutes to sit in front of the screen with the joystick like this and try to figure out, wait, is this a vehicle or is this a creature I'm supposed to fight? If you want to get back to Star Wars and the use of Japanese culture to represent the Jedi, for example, well, unconsciously you might think, ooh, Japanese culture, samurai, and you can think like, wow, those Jedi are like samurai. They are loyal, they have discipline, they're brave. And when you look at the uniform from the Empire, you think, oh, you guys look like the bad guy from World War II. You see, like every design you're using or what is based on, it's coming with a cultural baggage. So your audience can very easily spot this is a good guy, this is the bad guy. So yeah, the importance of like the cultural baggage, even if we all have different culture and different background, is very important whenever you are making a design choice. You're working in entertainment. You only have a few seconds for your audience to look at your design and understand exactly what's going on. And it's even more true if you are working, for example, on a stylized project that you think is going to be directed toward a younger audience, because a visual library and the understanding of the world is so much narrower and limited than an adult, that if you design a vehicle or a creature, you have to make it incredibly obvious based on like reference, like what it is, so a kid can look at it and also understand exactly what it is without having to like froze for a second. The importance of doing research and reference is also based on the fact like you don't want to offend people with your portfolio. You don't want to be known as a person who used Chinese architecture as reference to design a temple for a game that is taking place in Japan, for example. Or you don't want to be known as a person who designed a gothic Lolita made cosplay costume for a project that is taking place in France during the Victorian era. I can talk about it because I've seen that happen in the past. So there is a lot of research to do and they have to be accurate. Do not hesitate, like when you see an image online, to kind of like double check where it's from. Because sometimes you have like people like doing some research and they just run a keyword on Google and they kind of take like the first picture that appears on the Google image and they don't really double check like if it is an accurate reference. So be mindful about this kind of stuff. Now, how to do the research? Because sometimes you might think like, wow, there is so many stuff in my project, like how do I start that with? So focus on like the key elements of your project. So for example, it could be your character, the environment, and the activity. Again, we try to ensure like the previous who, where, when, what, why, ensure that we have asked during the design board. So for example, for my project here, well, I can do some research on pigs. I don't know anything about pigs. I don't even know like what they eat except from like a horror movie where they were like feeding humans to pigs. So apparently that's a thing. I need to do a lot of research about underwater fauna and flora. Again, I am really scared of large bodies of water, so I am not going to be the person who's going to go out to do like scuba diving and stuff like that. So I'm very not knowledgeable about whatever is happening underwater. So I'm conscious that I need to do a lot of research about that. I also need to do like research about underwater technology, about like how can we build a house that can be sustainable underwater. I was having the idea of having some character doing some underwater farming. So these are research I need to do. I'm not a farmer, so I need to do research about like how would you farm, especially like how would you farm maybe kelp or any other kind of seaweed. And I need to do a bit more research about underwater scientific research, like how are they done. Again, for the advice, set yourself a time for your research and try to limit yourself. Remember to always check your source and your reference. Granted, with your project, you will be able to change and have some twist to it, so it's not 100% accurate, but it's a good habit to build. And as you do your research, take some note and start to doodle. If you learn some information that is triggering your creativity or your imagination, do not hesitate to take some note and start to sketch some stuff. Again, you don't need to be rigid, you don't go step by step. First I need my core idea, then my board, then I do my research, and then I can draw. No, it's a very organic thing. Again, these videos are more like a guideline, but it's not like a process that you have to follow step by step. Like everybody works differently. It's really just if you have trouble to break down and manage your project at the moment, these videos can maybe help you out. But at the end of the day, like whatever makes you comfortable, just go with it. Another tip and advice to organize your research. So once you do your research and you take some notes and you find some information, you might find also some like very interesting picture. So for copyright reason, I am not going to share any image that I don't own in this video, just because I could write the source where I found the photo. That is very true. But at the same time, you never know if people, maybe they don't want to be related to you or to your video. For example, I can find a very cool photo of a fish online, but maybe the person who took that photo really hate concept artists for some reason, or really hate people wearing like white top for some reason. So they might not want to have their photography related to me or to this video. I know it's a very far-fetched example, obviously, but we need to be mindful. Just keep in mind, like, whatever photo or video or image you find online comes from someone. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. So I am just going to use those square. Imagine like every square, it's a photo or an image that I thought was interesting as a reference for the project. So what I like to do is that I define my reference board based on a topic. That could be environment, architecture, clothing and character, and mood. The reason why I would go with like different pages and every page has a very specific topic is because I do a lot of research and I have a lot of reference photo. I got way too many of them. So I need several pages. Majority of people, they're just gonna have one page with like all the reference that they need within that page, and that's perfect. That works very well too. And another advice that I don't always follow, but it's still like a very good advice, is you need to prioritize your reference within your board. So for example, if I got some reference for architecture here, I'm going to have one big reference image, which is like the core architecture I want my project to be based on. And then you're going to have secondary architecture that I think are interesting. And then I'm going to have a third type of like reference where like the architecture is interesting, but not as interesting as what I would see in the image number 1 or the image with the label 2. When your reference is the most important and that you think will have the most impact on your project, you put it big on that reference board. When you think like it's still important but not as much, it will take like a medium size. You can see the square of different size. And then for like the other reference that's still cool but not as important, the size is relatively small. Because when you're going to be looking at your reference board, you want your eyes to go to the main one, to the big one, to the most important reference hole. So this is like a pretty good way to actually prioritize your reference if you have too many references like me. So again, as I explained before, for copyright purposes, I'm not gonna share with you guys all the reference photo I found. Even on the same topic, everybody's gonna do their own research, and we're all gonna think that some information are more important than other, or that we prefer some information over other one. So even if you have the same topic, the same project, and you give it to 2 different people, you might come up with very different results, and that is totally fine. So after I did all the research and I found all my reference, I managed to answer all the questions I had in my board. And that's how I ended up with this. And this is how I reached this final board, where I got a very simple, summarized bone structure of the project. So I know initially I was supposed to pick only one kind of character, but I really just want to have fun with this project, and I'm gonna be designing pretty much 2 worlds. One for the pigman, which is like anthropomorphic pig character who decide to move underwater and we need to wear a suit for that. And I'm also gonna design some stuff for the merpig. Maybe along the way, I might end up giving up and abandoning one of these characters, but it's fine. For the purpose of that video, I just want to explore and have fun and just share with you guys the process through this. So, final board, we have our core idea, pig people living underwater. Who is it about? Pigman and merpig. I think it was easier to refer to those 2 like this. Where? I decided to pick a Mediterranean looking environment. When I say looking environment, obviously this is a world where pig people are living, walking, working, building houses, paying taxes. Is not a real world. This is what I'm trying to say. So it doesn't have to be the Mediterranean Sea, but it can be inspired from it. And that's what I was like talking about earlier, where yes, you have imaginative world, but it's always grounded on something that we can recognize and that exists. When So I thought like for like the pigment, they need the technology. So, but I don't want to go like hardcore to sci-fi. If you know about my portfolio, you can see that I never did any sci-fi work. I love sci-fi movies, but I have no interest whatsoever to design anything related to this. So I thought having something that is slightly in the future, so maybe like the 50 years in the future would be interesting because a lot of the technology will be similar to what we see nowadays. And because I want to do something stylized that is probably oriented for like a very young audience, it would be easy for them to recognize the item and to understand what's going on. But also I put it slightly in the future because I don't want to do like too much like heavy duty research about like how exactly would a suit work, how exactly would the house work. I just want to know enough to make my design believable, but at the same time I want to have this flexibility of that, oh, it's slightly in the future, so I can come up with like some magic design solution where it's like, oh, the technology at that time is allowing us to do this, so it's cool. I don't have to kind of like really overthink too much the technological part of my design. And for the merpig, because they are a creature who evolve underwater, I want them to have a bit more of a fantasy and magical vibe to them. So they'll be more stuck in the past. Why did I choose that as well is because again, I'm from the south of France, and we have a lot of very ancient architecture around us. So, for example, I'm from a town, and in the middle of our town, we have a castle from the 13th century, and it's just there. Doesn't mean that everybody in my village or my town is living like 13th century style. No, we don't. We have internet, we got smartphone, we even have a McDonald's. But so that's why I thought like I don't think it would be too traumatic or dangerous to have like those two character from different environment and with different technology to kind of like meet together. I don't think it would be too much of a clash because I can see like even in the town where I come from, you can have stuff that are very modern, and yet you're gonna see like a shepherd walking his ships along the street, and it's kind of like, yeah, that's totally acceptable, you know. What and why? So I thought it would be easier for like the pigment to do some scientific research, and they would like eventually like come across the merpig person who is just like an humble farmer or a humble shepherd. I think I just want to like design something like, yeah, I just want to design a shepherd. I just want to design something that reminds me of home. That's it. Okay, so now that we have all this set up, we will finally be able to start drawing. Oh no, wait a minute, before that, we need to plan what are we gonna draw. I told you those videos are mostly about trying to help you, to teach you how to break down and organize a project. It is not gonna be about teaching you how to draw. So the next video is really gonna be about how do you decide what do you need to design for your portfolio.